Welcome to Empower Humans.
Welcome again to the Empower Humans podcast. This is episode 104. We have a great interview today with Udo Erasmus. He's 78 years old. He just had his birthday. So he was born in 1942 during and in the aftermath of World War II in Europe, and dealt with all kinds of things in Poland, of all places, by the way. So he got into that quite in depth at the early pretty much like third of the interview. We talked a lot about all that stuff and then how it all coincides on a grander scale of humanity with what we need to do to live in harmony, both individually and collectively, and connect with the energy that is in all of us, both on a nutritional and physical level and on a mental, spiritual, all these different levels of what we are as people. I think you'll find it very enlightening. Before we jump more into that, I want to remind you, as always, of course, you are absolutely priceless. You're never alone. None of those things will change. Do not believe anything to the contrary from anyone or anything, any experience, because nothing can change that. So you need to live in harmony with that reality as well, and don't go with any other lies or deceit in that realm. You are absolutely priceless, and you're never alone. Reach out if you need to. info@empowerhumans.com is the email address. You can go through our website as well. Also at Empower 101 on Instagram and Twitter. You also have access, hopefully in some capacity, with all the communication channels, despite this virus thing at this very moment that we're recording and releasing this. And maybe you'll listen to this down the road, and hopefully this will have dissipated to some extent. But you've got ways to communicate with friends, neighbors, coworkers, family, and whatnot as well. So on that note, let's talk real quick about our challenges. Study, keep studying, start studying. Whatever it is for you, you need to do it. We need to keep our minds sharp. We need to continue to stimulate our minds. You know, I've been listening to this audiobook called Grateful American. Basically, it's an autobiography of Gary Sinise, the actor. He played Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump. He's been in Apollo 13 and dozens of other great works and movies, TV shows, series, all these various things. So interesting story. I haven't finished it yet, but I love biographies, autobiographies. That's one of the reasons I do this podcast. I love talking to people, hearing their stories, hearing their background, hearing what pieces came together to make them who and what they are and what they do with their lives as well. So just some suggestions based on who I am and what I like to learn, but do what works for you as well. There's all kinds of resources out there, so we don't have any excuses. Study, and of course, let's make great moments. That's our second challenge. Of course, that's with loved ones. You know the drill. Surprise, love, and extend that love, and that's what this is all about. Make great moments. These are pillars in our lives to overshadow, you know, our various mistakes and shortcomings that we all have. And of course, the last challenge, let's keep doing this podcast together. Udo Erasmus is a very dynamic, interesting individual. He's actually given over 5,000 live presentations on nutrition and health, 3,000 plus media interviews. He's got all kinds of history here. So this is a guy with lots of experience, 78 years old. I think there's a lot to be learned for the most part from the older generations, from those of us who are younger. So he's pretty much double my age because I'm 39. He's 78. So lots of respect, lots of great material. We did bounce around all kinds of different things in this interview. There were a couple times where I tried to jump in. I thought he was done talking about something, and you'll hear some of that, just the nature of conversation and interviews at times. But I think overall some very valuable and thought-provoking material. He says he's got the answers to a lot of things, and he's also got a brand called Udo's Choice in health food stores, Whole Foods, and various things like that. So we're going to talk about all that stuff. So without further ado, my friends, let's jump into this interview with Udo Erasmus. Here we go. Hey, it's our privilege today to be here with Udo Erasmus, who is the founder of Udo's Choice and also author, speaker, award-winning author at that. Udo, how are you today, my friend?
What's my first day of my 79th year of traipsing this planet.
Oh, hey, today's your birthday?
Yesterday.
Oh, yesterday. Yeah, great. Happy belated birthday. I'm sorry I didn't send a card. I should have. I didn't know.
No problem.
I didn't get the announcement. Well, good. Happy. So
I know. It's my fault.
Yeah, it is your fault. So we're gonna leave it at that. And that's a great way to start our interview. No, but happy birthday. So are you 79 or 78?
78.
Oh, so you're in your 79th year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Great.
And if you count the pregnancy, then I'm almost 79 now.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
the
right.
extra 9 months there. I was apparently existing as a separate being from the time of conception, not the time of birth.
Okay. Yeah, well, I like that perspective. That's good. Good. And so you're coming to us from Vancouver, Canada here today. And
Yep.
we're both on Pacific time, so that helps. We're going to be going 12 hours. No, I'm just kidding. We talked about that joke at the beginning. You've got all kinds of interesting things you do. That's what I wanted to bring into the podcast here and let you share with our audience a lot of what these things are. But let's go back a little bit because I understand you have quite a colorful background, for lack of a better word, a very interesting and in-depth background. So tell me about that because you didn't. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was born in 1942, so it was during the Second World War in Poland, which was at that time part of Germany.
Yeah.
My parents were from Latvia and Estonia with German-Swedish background. And when I was 2, we were refugees fleeing from the communists who were who were chasing us in tanks and trucks.
Wow.
And on roads that only had refugees on them, no soldiers, just refugees, women mostly, because their men were all off at war, and in hay wagons drawn by horses, women and kids, young kids.
Wow.
And the Allies were using us as target practice, shooting at us from planes.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, these were the good guys, right?
Yeah.
And my mother had to get out of the wagon and get off the road, and she took 2 of the 6 kids she had with her through the fields because it was safer, and left 4 of us behind. And I was one of the left behind ones. And eventually, her sister heard about what happened and came back behind enemy lines, and because she was fluent in Russian, by that time the Russians were already past us, and so because she was fluent in Russian, she found us and then reunited us with the family.
Wow.
So I don't remember that much other than fear, anxiety, hunger, and confusion.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was a confused kid just from that. And when I was 6 years old, I listened to, we made it out to Germany. We were living in Germany until I was 10, and we then came to Canada when I was 10. I was listening to adults in Germany argue about things that I thought as a 6-year-old were really trivial. So they must have been pretty trivial.
Yeah.
Because my world wasn't that big, you know. So,
yeah.
And I thought, I listened to that, and it was just so not right. And I thought, there must be a way that people can live in harmony, and I'm going to find out how. And obviously, like a 6-year-old who doesn't know how complicated everything is, right? I just figured, I'll figure it out. But I have figured it out. And so that was my beginning. And then what drove me was because I didn't know what I could rely on. I got into science to understand how things work, and then I got into biosciences to understand how creatures work. Then I got into psychology to understand how thinking works. You know, if you want to know how people can live in harmony, you would want to know some of that.
Yeah.
And then eventually I got into self-knowledge because I really needed to know how I work.
Yeah.
And that's basically is my background. Out of that, I got poisoned by pesticide when my marriage broke up, and I was really ticked and I wanted to kill something. So I took a job as a pesticide sprayer, was really careless, then got poisoned when I was 38 after 3 years of spraying. And then went to the doctor, and the doctor said, I said to her, what do you have for pesticide poisoning? She said, nothing. And that day, the penny dropped for me that my health is actually my responsibility. And so I got very focused on health, and I ended up then writing a book that's now called Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. Developed a method for making oils with health in mind because they're very, very sensitive. Most sensitive of our nutrients, need the most care, damaged by light, oxygen, and heat. And we give them the least care. We throw them in frying pans. And I thought, you know what? I couldn't get healthy on oils like that. We should make them with health in mind. So I developed a method for doing that. And basically an industry started from that notion. And flaxseed oil was my first oil. Mm-hmm. So that was and that was the omega-3s that are too low in 99% of the population. So it is the biggest essential nutrient deficiency of our time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, when I realized, because it wasn't established as essential, omega-3, until 1981, the year after I got poisoned. And when I learned that, I got really excited. I said, oh my God, we could help so many people if we could give them omega-3s that they're, but make them with health in mind, because they're even more easily damaged than the omega-6s. And so if we could make them both with health in mind and give people the right ratio, oh my God, we could help so many people. And the research now says when you get your omega-3s right, you can improve virtually every major degenerative condition of our time.
Wow.
So I ended up making flaxseed oil and then a blend that is better balanced, that has omega-3 and 6s both made with health in mind. And I've been working with that since 1994.
So you've been around a while, and you've got quite a history here. Clearly,
yeah,
I want to get into everything with these oils and your whole philosophy. It's a bold statement you made about you figured out humans could live in harmony. So I want to get back to that too in a second. But tell me about life in Poland and Europe during this time. You say you don't remember much. What, aside from seeing these trivial discussions and arguments, obviously there was probably a great deal of poverty and suffering, and surely tension between certain both cultures, classes.
My parents had a farm in Latvia. That's a big deal, having a farm in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the only people who can't accomplish anything else, they go farming. It's it's a respected profession. So he had a farm in Latvia,
mm-hmm.
and when Hitler and Stalin made their peace pact, Latvia went to the Soviet Union, and the part of Poland that I was born in went to Germany. But there was nobody from Latvia and Poland at the meeting. So they just took it because they were big.
Yeah.
Right? The politics of big.
Yeah.
And so I was born on a stolen farm, and the farmer was working for my dad on his own farm. Right? Because it had been taken away by Germany.
Goodness gracious.
We lost, and then we lost that farm because it wasn't ours anyway.
Yeah.
And we fundamentally had nothing. When my mother was fleeing, my dad was in a prisoner of war camp, and basically all she had was kids, 6 and under, and silver spoons wrapped in cloth, because silver had some value, and these were heirlooms. Like the oldest one I've seen was from 1740. They had the dates engraved on them, and sometimes people's names.
Wow!
So this was like a kind of a family heirloom kind of thing, if that's the right word. And but we had nothing. We started with nothing. But what's interesting? So then we got into Germany, and we lived above the stable in a barn with 9 horses, in 2 little rooms with 7 people. Yeah. And we really had very little. My father worked for pitsy wages on that farm. But what's interesting is I don't remember ever feeling poor. And I think it's because I was always checking out stuff. I was always trying to figure out things, and I wasn't comparing myself. My sister, who was 4 or 5 years older than I, always compared herself. So she always felt like she was missing something. Mm-hmm. I don't remember ever feeling like I was missing something.
Right. Yeah.
And so which is maybe it's just because, well, at least they're not shooting at us.
Yeah, that's
right?
Quite a perspective. I mean, you think about at least they're not shooting at us. A lot of us Americans can't even wrap our heads around, just because of the way we live in this Western world over here. Both the poverty, the living conditions in general. And I hear that a lot from folks in that generation. And, like I have my great aunt who just turned 100 last fall, and she talks, we talked to her about this virus, and She's,
Yeah.
this is nothing, she says. She's been through all the rationing and all the things of World War II and the Depression and all these. She says, this is nothing.
And my father went through the First World War, then the Bolshevik Revolution, then the Depression, and then the Second World War.
Yeah.
That was it. And he couldn't get out of Europe fast enough when he finally came home from his prisoner of war camp.
Oh, he was a prisoner of war, huh?
And it's true. When I was in university, I was always the heavy guy because people would talk about, oh, come on, let's start a riot, let's start a war. And it would trigger me. I would just say, that's not funny. And why are you so heavy? Well, I've been through one of these goddamn things. And then they want to, so then they would go and do their stuff. And one time they did start a riot. And they had gone out in the morning to say, we're going to go and start a riot on English Bay, which is one of the beaches. And I didn't go. And when they came back, they said, oh, my God, we started a riot. I said, well, that's what you said you were going to do, right? But they didn't. It's easy to be cavalier about stuff when you have no experience.
Yeah.
And then and when you've been through a war, then that's not a joke.
You're right.
So for me, it was never a joke. I'm a little more mellow now, but at that time, whenever they do that, I'd be like the guy who was just like, "What the hell are you talking about? This is not funny."
Yeah, well,
anyway.
No, you're absolutely right. I think we need to value and respect that perspective of people like you who've come from these war-torn areas and value what that brings to the table. What's that?
Yeah, but it's impossible if you haven't been through it.
No, you're absolutely right.
That's always the issue.
Yeah,
right? And then a different kind of thinking comes out of having experiences like that.
Yeah.
And you start recognizing that life is more precious than anything else. Because you lost everything else, right? But you still got your life. So, okay, life is cool.
Well, you've probably seen more than your. Go ahead.
And it turns out, if you look at the whole planet, what makes this planet precious and special is it's got life on it.
Yeah.
And whether you're talking about insects or plants or humans, this is the planet of life where we don't know any other planet like that.
Absolutely.
And life is the treasure here, not money and not big houses and not this and not that, but life inside of the human body is the treasure here.
Yes. Yes.
And we're not really living with any real conscious awareness of that most of the time.
Yeah.
And then we do stupid things.
I love that perspective.
And then we do
we do stupid things. You're right. What are some of the stupid things we do? I think some of us know a lot of those things. A lot of it's just careless disregard for each other as human beings and for ourselves, the way we, eat and.
Yeah. I think we're now at the point where we're screwing it up on health. We're screwing it up on relationships. We're screwing it up on politics, and we're screwing it up on environment. Other than that.
Yeah. Well, that's.
Right?
The only reason we laugh is because it's such these are such important, any one of those things would be too much, and all of them combined is just almost unfathomable. And yet we just most of us don't know anything to do other than turn a blind eye because most of us aren't in power. Most of us aren't super rich or any of these other things. I mean, what can we do? I know we're kind of getting off the track of we're going to get back to some of these other topics with the nutritional aspects of things.
We're getting right on it right now with
Good.
that question. What do we do?
Yes.
Well, here's the thing. You're not powerless, and I'm not powerless.
Okay.
We have given our power to a handful of people who misuse the power. But we still have our power. What is our power? Life is our power.
Yes.
The fact that you can breathe and think and walk and do stuff
and
refrain from doing stuff. And that you have choices. There's your power. But we're not exercising it, but slowly it's changing because certainly the young generation knows that this is not sustainable what we're doing. And so they are looking for alternatives big time. The fact that there's a show like you and I are doing right now is a sign of the times that we know more is needed than what we've done.
Yeah.
Something is needed that we have neglected or that we need to take into consideration.
Yeah, that's a very good perspective.
Yeah.
And I think about it, everything you're saying is so interesting because I think most of us as people have kind of an inkling that we have an ability to do something, but most of us don't quite know what to do. And
Right.
maybe we ought to start with ourselves with all these areas you're talking about, both with nutrition, health, relationships, mindset.
I agree with everything you just said, except the maybe.
All right. Yeah. And
we need to do that.
Yeah. A guy who's in his 78th year, we ought to 79th year, excuse me.
Barely into my 79th year.
Yeah. I mean, that's some perspective. I'm 39 myself, so I'm roughly half your age. I'm a little bit older than you were when you had that poisoning that you discussed too. And boy, and I come to, I want to put all this in perspective too, in another angle, because I look at my boys. I have two boys that are 8 and 10. A lot of my audience knows this, and you have. I know you have at least one daughter. You mentioned before we got into the interview.
I have 3. I have a son and 2 daughters.
Oh, okay. And they must be all grown up now, I imagine.
Yeah, they're in their 40s.
Yeah, there it is. They're older than me. But these years flew by for you, I'm sure, right? Because I remember when my dad was 39, and now he's 73, 72. Sorry, Dad. He'll be 73 in August. But so time is short, time is fast, and I think that we need to throw a sense of urgency into the mix as we talk about all this stuff. That it's not just okay, we can and maybe, like you said, the maybe is not the issue. That we need to take that off of the equation. We got to do these things, or else face our fate, which could be a negative fate if we don't take action. What are your thoughts?
Right. So, well, here's the thing. In a very long story of the history of life on Earth, and if you're religious, maybe it's only 6,000 years, but if you're not religious, it's 4.3 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Life developed on this planet. And out of that system came you through, your parents had sex, conception, the whole thing. If you look at it, it's like awe-inspiring how everything works. From the perspective of creativity.
Yeah.
And so you are given an independent existence with conception. And then your body grows. And while you're in I call it the Buddha tank, while you're in your mother's womb, there's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
It's safe and everything is provided. And you're just floating in this little tank. Your awareness is at rest because there's no place to go for it. It's at rest inside, in its source, in life, inside of your body.
Yeah.
And I call that the Buddha. That's why I call it the Buddha tank, because you're a little Buddha floating around. Because what made the masters different is they actually were able to bring their awareness to the core of their being. And in the core of their being, they were in touch with God and with life and with inspiration and basically with everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's part of the human experience. And each human being has that built into them, just as part of the deal from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so then you come out and then you get to know the world. Your awareness goes out into the world through your senses.
Yeah.
You become disconnected from your core.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where disconnection and then discontent and then searching for something is missing or feeling of loss comes from. And then you spend the rest of your life trying to figure out how to find what you lost, but you can't remember what you lost.
Mm. Wow.
Because and you didn't lose anything except the connection of your awareness to your own inner nature.
That's very profound, simple, and very deep at the same time.
Yeah, and then you go around and you do crazy stuff like have wars and steal money and lie to people and look for power and look for prestige and look for being better than because you feel worse than because you don't feel whole. Mm-hmm. And all of that is part of the search for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But you came loaded. You have everything. Every human being, if they're alive, they have everything already built into them. and why it's not trivial that we need to spend time being present in the space that our body occupies, and to discover what all is in that space. Because there's peace there, and there's love there, and there's wholeness there, and there's inspiration there, and there's wisdom there, and there's intuition there. I mean, there's so many things that feel so good, but we're always looking on the outside because we forgot that where all those things are is not out there, but in here.
Mm. Yeah. And how do we tap into that?
Yeah. And well, let me just say one more thing. And
Yeah.
here's the thing.
Go ahead.
You can, some people sometimes say, oh, dwelling on yourself is selfish. Don't be selfish. No, it's not true, because you were given this gift. You're living in this gift. And if you don't enjoy that gift, it is a wasted gift, because no one else can enjoy your life for you. And so the wise people all say, either whether they're close to death or really young or really wise for whatever reason of their own story, they all say job one is to sit still in your being. In other words, you stop doing, you get into your being, and you discover what is in your space.
Yeah.
And being is actually more important than doing, because you can be without doing, but you can't do without being. So being is actually more foundational. So you need, so it's more important to get your foundation right, because then everything else becomes easier.
Yeah.
But
Great.
that's not part of our cultural education. And that's why so many people are so confused. And that's why part of what we're doing in a podcast like this, and what I think is my mission in life, is basically to rub people's noses at that. Man, what you're looking for, you've already got. Why are you looking out there for what you got in here?
Yeah.
But, and why don't you get to your root and discover the magnificence of the experience of light, dust, water, and air being mixed in a way that you can have the human experience.
Yeah.
Because at the end, it's all going to be light, water, dust, and air again, right?
Mm-hmm.
We only have it for a time, but we have it so that we can enjoy it, and not enjoy it by doing a bunch of stuff, but enjoy it by just being present in it.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right on that. I think most people listening, if not all, would agree that everything you're saying hits the nail on the head. This is all true. We all want these things. Where it gets complicated is the simple question of how. How do we get to that place? Because there's so many philosophies, Eastern, philosophies and Buddhism and all these various things about meditation and mindfulness. But how do and I think I found some answers. You said you have it figured out as a 78-year-old great man that you are, clearly. So tell us, how do we get to this place?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't come from Buddhist philosophy or Christian philosophy or Hindu philosophy. Those are expressions.
Okay.
Like the masters were people like us.
Mm-hmm. We
have the same divinity in us that they had in them. And they had the same physical body to deal with that we have.
Right.
We always have both. Life is the divine. It's a spark of the divine. And we could do a scientific track on that, but life is the divine in you, and the difference between you and the master is that the master took it seriously to sit still and get in touch with life, and then began to express the experience. And then what we did is we dabble in it if we do anything at all, and then instead of doing our own discovery, inner discovery, we just memorize somebody else's words and then parrot them back. We call that religion.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be. And then we create formulas out of that. When the truth is what was in Jesus is also in you. And he even said that. All the masters said, what I have, you have. Just go there. And so fundamentally the how is I begin by saying, first of all, recognize that what you want, what you are searching for, what you're working for, what's driving you crazy that you can't find, is already present within you, full-fledged. The only thing that happened is your awareness wandered off. That's why you're not experiencing it. It's like saying, well, I want to find the money that I have in my left pocket, but I'm only going to look for it in my right pocket.
Yeah.
I don't have any money in my right pocket, but I want to find the money in my left pocket by looking in my right pocket. That's stupid. I want to find on the outside what I've got on the inside. I can only find it on the inside, but I'm going to look for it on the outside. That's stupid.
Yeah.
That's the stupidity of the human race. So the first thing is recognize that what you're looking for is already fully present in all of your being. And it's called life because I'll say to you, I'll point at you and I'll say, whose body is that? What's your answer?
Well, it's the individual.
No. If I'm pointing at you?
Oh, you're pointing at me. Well,
yeah.
it's mine, isn't
mine.
it?
No, you know what you've just told me? You just busted yourself.
Uh-oh.
You've just told me you're not the body. You've just told me you're the owner of the body. My body means you're the owner of the body. So then the question is, well, who are you as owner of the body?
Yeah.
And then people tell me their name. I said, no, that's just a label somebody stuck on your body. So who are you? Well, you actually are life. You actually are the energy. That's what the masters meditated on. That's what they recommended for us to meditate on. That's what they said. If we did, we would be like them. They were teachers of human nature. That would be a better way than to create all this weird, they were perfect and you're really screwed up and all the craziness that we've done around that. So we have what the masters had, but they looked at it and we're dabbling with it.
Yeah, I think you're right on a lot of. Go ahead.
So what did they do? They took time to sit down, to close their eyes, to pull their awareness out of the world, of surfaces of things, pull it inside to as much as they could, and then just breathe and see how still you can become, and see how deep you can go into that stillness, and see what you're going to discover there, and see how long you can stay there before you have to go pee. Right?
Or maybe do that before you go there, so that.
Well, but if you sit long enough, you have to pee again, right?
Yeah, it's a recurring thing.
But they spent time every day doing a practice of bringing their awareness back home.
But wouldn't most people say though that? Sorry to cut you off a little bit. Wouldn't most people, at least in our Western society, say things like, "That's all fine and good and sounds great, but I'm busy." I mean, these days maybe people aren't as busy. We've got now 36 million, I think, unemployed as of this recording, and and that's not a laughing matter either. But it's but I'm busy. I've got kids to feed, and I've got a job to do. And then by the time I'm done with that, and sleeping and eating and all these other little life tasks and the peeing that you mentioned, once we add that all adds up, then the day's gone. And I know people who meditate for 2 hours a day in our Western world too, and it's just a matter of priorities and taking the time. I'm not saying everyone needs to go 2 hours or 20 hours or whatever, but go ahead. Yeah.
Well, let's look at that. You never hear somebody say, "I'm too busy to pee. I'm too busy to poo. I'm too busy to eat. I'm too busy to have sex. I'm too busy to work. I'm too busy." See, we're too busy.
Okay.
The only thing we're too busy for is to do our homework. We're not too busy for everything else. To drink, to breathe, right?
Those are bodily functions that you mentioned too, like physical body. So we're talking about something that I think transcends that even deeper. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm getting there. So we don't have a problem with any of that, and we live as though we were the body, and we take care of the needs of the body, and we deal with the kids, and we're not too busy to deal with the kids either, right? So
hope not. Yeah, go ahead.
and we respond to needs. You get the need to pee. It lets you, you know when you got to go, right? Well, there's a place that's calling you to come back home, and it's called heartache. But there's actually, I've got 10 pages of different names people call it. Heartache, yearning, sorrow, longing, grief, emptiness, restlessness, blues, loneliness.
Don't you use a term called, don't you say thirst of the heart? Isn't that something that you have used as well?
And some people call that the thirst of the heart.
Uh-huh.
So there is something in you, and you don't like that thirst because it makes you uneasy. You don't like the feeling. It can be intense. You don't know what to do about it because nobody tells you what that is. All that is, it's never about grandma who died or the dog who ran away or the woman who dumped you or the guy who dumped you, or that you want to have somebody to complete you because you're already complete. It's not about that. That ache in the chest that we have called all these different names is your heart calling your awareness to come back home to life. So there is your starting point for why you want to sit still in that feeling instead of distracting yourself from it. Because what we mostly do is distract ourselves from it, ignore it, deny it, or blame it on somebody. But actually, this is this feeling of loss comes from your disconnection from yourself that began the moment you were born. And then you pick substitutes, and when one of those substitutes ends, you're left with that loss, with that original loss.
Yeah.
This is not about somebody outside. This is something about that happened within you inside.
Mm-hmm.
And your fix for that is not another distraction or another $1 million or another, sexual conquest.
Mm.
Your fix for that ache is to sit in the ache and see if you can slip behind it, because less than a hair's breadth behind it is the wholeness that all your life you're striving for. That's something in you that your heart is striving for, that the core of your being is striving to reconnect to all your life.
Yeah.
And when I was 17, I felt that so strong, I couldn't shake it. I ran out of distractions. And maybe it's because I was born in the war that I saw through many things pretty quickly. But I couldn't shake it. And then I didn't know what it was. When I asked people, they said, oh, don't think about, just get a job like your brother. You'll just drive yourself crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't shake it because it was always there. And eventually, after 13 years of that, I ran into somebody who said to me that what you're looking for, it's already inside of you.
Mm.
And I'll show you how to get there.
Yeah.
So, and this was in 1972. So I've been doing it for a while. And in 1972, there was very little talk about anything like that.
Yeah.
Because that was mostly, there were practices in the Eastern world.
Yes.
But there were no practices like that in Christianity other than contemplation and prayer.
Mm-hmm.
But, the best prayer is silence.
Right.
Because in the prayer of silence, you realize that God has already given you everything you ever wanted and way more.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, God, give me this. Oh, God, make this go away. And it's thank you. How incredible is it that I have the chance of being dust and water as a human being?
Yeah.
And then and then the whole world. And then what happens when you take that, let's an hour? Let's say 5 minutes, take 10 minutes, take 15 minutes, take an hour, take 2 hours if you can. When you do that, you also find that you organize your day. So you actually live more effectively if you take the time to do nothing, because in that nothing, your day gets organized.
That's a very profound concept. It sounds like, in summary, the key to all this is, number one, realizing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, recognizing who and what we really truly are and the real depth and light of all of that, and then making the time to tap into that on a very regular basis to connect with that higher self, if you will. And
it's as important as peeing. Except it's not as it's like if you pee your pants, it's visible it's visible on your pants, right?
Yeah.
So, but when you don't connect to your heart, it is not visible to other people. Although they'll know you're restless. You're not quite calm.
Yeah.
Right? But it's always there for you.
We can sense that about each other, can't we? It sounds, it sounds partially like what this is, the responsibility, and we've talked a lot about this recently in the podcast too, is that we are both responsible and capable of finding that peace always. And that's such a liberating thing. We don't have to rely on or distract ourselves with any external anything. No matter what's going on in your world, good, bad, pleasureful, painful, whatever it is, we still, no matter what, can find with our, of course, concerted effort, a constant state of peace, harmony, joy, happiness. We always talk about joy means an alignment in our podcast. We talk about joy means that, an alignment. A lot of really deep things for all of us to think about, and I think really put into action, not just talk about and then move on. We ought to actually be doing this.
Yeah, and you just said that other people can notice, but the most important thing is that you notice yourself.
Yeah, becoming aware. You said that earlier.
Yeah, self-aware. Yeah, that you become aware of what is your state of being. And when I understood that and started doing the practice, it was like, wow, I'm actually taken care of. Before that, I was always looking for something to do that would take care of me. And I wouldn't do things that needed to be done because I couldn't see how they would take care of me, because I didn't feel taken care of. When I started doing the practice, I felt taken care of because life has taken care of this body, unconditionally loved it for every, it's 24/7, 365 for 78 years now. And when I get in touch with that, I feel that unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now it's like, I'm taken care of. So it's not about me anymore. And I can look around and say, okay, what needs to be done around here? Where can I help? And then it's not about I'll help if I get money. It's I'll help because help is needed. And it changes. I have now changed from being a getter to being a giver. You can't be a giver if you're discontent, because you'll always be taking. Even you'll say, we're satisfaction guaranteed, we'll give you this, and with all of this, and all of it, it's all bullshit. Because what you're really interested in is what you're getting out of it. And that tells you that when you have $100 billion and you're still dissatisfied, it's because you haven't done your homework.
Yeah.
And you will not be satisfied when you have 200 billion. And you will not be satisfied when you have 1 trillion.
And that's not an uncommon story. Yeah.
No, and when I was in university, I was poor. We didn't have much, but I had friends who had pretty rich parents, and we used to hang out with the parents. And none of those people were any happier than I was. So I learned relatively early that money is not the source of happiness.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I did my work with oils for 15 years, I was broke. I actually moved in with my mother because I wanted to do it because it needed to be done. I had already been doing my practice for 8 years. When I felt not taken care of, I knew where to go to feel taken care of. So it wasn't like, I wonder what will take care of me now, because I already knew that's inside. All I have to do is when I don't feel taken care of, sit down, tune in, feel taken care of. So that became easier. And then, so I started looking at oils, and oh my God, we could help so many people. And it was not about the money. It was like, this needs to be done. So for 15 years, I was broke. And then the money got pretty good. But the money didn't become good because I was in it for the money. I have never been in it for the money. Because in the end, what is money? Money is a means of exchange. Money has no value other than as a means of exchange, unless you make it think that it's your salvation. And then you're going to find out it's not your salvation.
It's a scary place.
Bezos, I read this morning, Bezos is now on track to become the first trillionaire on the planet. Because of everything has to be shipped now. So apparently his business has gone up 4 times.
Yeah.
You quadrupled his business because everything's being shipped. He basically owns the post office now.
Well,
it's like, okay, and then.
yeah, and each one of those dollars is worth less now too, as we do all these stimulus packages. And I mean, there's so much to this money. I don't even want to. If we got into money, we'd be talking for 2 more hours just on that, because that whole system is a very.
And he's, but if he has $1 trillion, he still will not feel taken care of, and he'll still be a bum. And he still treat his people badly, and he still have affairs on the side.
Well,
it's like these are not the actions of people who are content.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know Jeff Bezos. My dad met him once, way back in the 90s. But and some other rich people have come and probably crossed all of our paths in some capacity, and some are more content than. It's not about the money or not. It's about the mindset and the focus of the individual.
Exactly.
So if you have $1 trillion, you could be happy or sad. You could be an unhappy, discontent person, as you're describing, or
exactly.
Opposite.
You could have $1 trillion and be happy too.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure you'd be chasing it if you were, and you'd probably be giving a lot of it away, because how are you going to ever spend $1 trillion?
Well, the funny thing about money is it's all external. I mean, it's all the only thing money ultimately can do is buy external sensory stimulation and some semblance or delusion of inner, security that, I have money in a big house or whatever the things the money bought, some nice trips. But it's all sensory stimulation on the external. That's all money is. It doesn't bring you that inner.
Right.
You bring yourself the peace with or without the money.
Except if you're content, you look at that money and say, well, I got more money than I need. Where can I use the money to help? Because when heart goes with money, the money can do good things. When the heart is missing, and heart without money can do a lot of good things.
Mm-hmm.
But money without heart never really does much good.
Yeah.
We throw money. I mean, if you look at government, they throw money at everything. When the heart's not there, the money doesn't actually improve things.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe briefly, but and the issue is not about money. The issue is about being content. How can you live your life aware of the treasures that you have?
Yeah.
That you got as a gift. When you say, I made myself very rich, really? Your parents had to have sex to bring you in. That was not you doing it yourself.
Yeah. True.
You used the roads somebody else built. You used vehicles and cars and trucks and airplanes somebody else built. So there are no self-made men. When people give me credit for doing the work on fats that I do, but honestly, there were like hundreds of thousands of people involved in it, including the people who bought it, including the people who did that I did the tours with, the hotels I stayed in, the researchers who did the research that I made use of. So, I was in a good place. I was in the right place at the right time, asking the right questions. But even the ability to ask the right question is a gift that life gave me. I didn't earn that.
I think that's good stuff. As you're talking, go ahead.
Yeah. So we come in loaded with gifts, and then we try to take try to claim we own them. Just like land, right? The land was created by, whoever created the earth, and then we had planted a flag in North America and said, I claim all this land for the Queen of England, and there were already 10 million people living here.
Yeah, and the interesting thing too is all these lines that we call borders aren't real. This is just made up little lines that we've all made over the years, and like with your wars over in Europe and stuff. I shouldn't say yours, but those wars and lots of others. Lines have been drawn, drawn on a piece of paper, but not on the land. These lines weren't there naturally.
And then even though they drew lines on the map, because they were big, Germany and Soviet Union just took the land anyway because they could. So they basically stole the land from the people who were living on it.
I think that's
without
you're right.
without even a conversation with those people about it.
That's a great metaphor for our natural tendencies as human beings. I think we draw fake lines and fake borders and fear thresholds and all these various things that hold us back, that are all made up on paper, that aren't real. And then when we tap into reality, it's a different story, and that's what we need to be, is live in the reality of what we are, who we are, and all this light that you're talking about.
And here's what's interesting. No one has ever in a relationship, abused their partner in a moment of contentment. No one ever. No one ever annexed another country in a moment of contentment. It's always based on discontent. Yeah. I need more. We're going to take more. Why? Because we can. And somehow we think that if we can get away with that, somehow something good is going to come out of it.
Yeah, you're right.
Come on, you guys, wake up.
Well, tell me more on the, it's clear that and you've got 78 plus years experience here. We could go on about all this philosophy quite in depth. And I think, suffice it to say, for our listeners, we need to tap into ourselves and connect with this deep inner self, and from a real big picture of what we are, and also realizing that the fact that we even exist is all part of a big picture, that, like you pointed out with our parents and the land and all these things that were pre-existing conditions that we didn't do. We didn't give ourselves this heart. We didn't give ourselves all these things. And by realizing all that, there's just like this bigger sense of understanding and peace. And even if you were to go, this is very deep for me, and I think a lot of people, when you start to study outer space or galaxies and all these various things, it's so profound. The distances are so unfathomable, even to like again, I'm getting off track, but real fast, the nearest star to our solar system is something like 4.7 light years, which is in the neighborhood of 25 trillion miles. And that's just the nearest of billions of stars. And that's just in our galaxy of hundreds of billions of known galaxies. And it's just too much. We have to live in this big picture. And I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but I'm reinforcing what you're saying. This big picture is what we are, not the small picture of ourselves. We sell ourselves short.
We're in touch. We're in touch with the big picture by being in touch with the core of our being, because everything is connected there.
Yeah, there's an old quote on that too.
Yeah, when I talk about under the umbrella of health, nature and human nature, so the core of our being is awareness, and I call it internal awareness. It's a point, and that point of awareness is not limited to my body. I go to the core to get there, but in that core, that point goes out to infinity, and that's an experience. I'm talking about an experience. I'm not talking about a drawing on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So the core is internal awareness. And that awareness has no content, like nothing physical in it, but it has complete peace, its presence, its calmness. It's really solid, even though you can't see it. It's really solid.
Yeah.
And then out from that is life energy. That energy is your God, your personal God, because it's omnipresent in your body, all-knowing in your body, and all-powerful in your body. That's the definition of God in religion. Omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. Life is that in your body. Knows everything, runs everything, weighs nothing. And if you bring your awareness inside, you can actually see it as light, hear it as sound, feel it as fulfillment or love or contentment, and you can taste it even, because your senses monitor energy, both on the outside, but they can also monitor on the inside if you bring your awareness inside. So that's the third. The second. Then out of that comes inspiration. Inspiration is part of the mind. It's the light part of the mind, and inspiration is the cure for depression, anxiety, and PTSD and all that, because you cannot be inspired and depressed at the same time. And that's just the extension of the shine of life, the energy that is life, the sunlight that is life within you shining.
Yeah.
Then you got the physical body, and there you talk about food and fitness and rest and recovery and detox and avoiding toxins and digestion. That's all part of that. That's what most people focus on when they talk about health. Then the next one is survival smart, and that's a combination of skills and calmness. So you want to be fully present in your being to be good at crisis management. That's where your resilience comes from. And then the next one out is the social group. That who you hang out with affects your health. And then the next one out of that is nature, planet, solar system. That's your environment. That affects your health. And then outside of that is the big picture, the fact that you're in a temporary body, that you are an eternal spark in a temporary body in an infinite universe, and to be okay with that.
Wow.
When you are fully present in all of your being and your surroundings, and that's possible, but it takes practice. Then you're not lost in thoughts in your head, and then you can live your life in a flow where you can respond to emerging situations easily, not like, oh God, what do I do now? But you can flow with those situations, and you literally have the best possible life that is possible for a human being to have, and that would be called the life of a master. And your mastery is to be fully present in all of your being and your surroundings at the same time. Sometimes people call it simultaneous present, because you're present inside and outside at the same time. And that's the cherished state. Am I in that state all the time? No, but I know that state, and it's amazing. Yeah,
and that's something to point out too. We don't need to hold ourselves to perfection standard, but we need to strive for this, is what you're saying.
Right. Well, we want to give each one its due. See, my senses will always take me out into the world, because its job is to monitor change for survival. So whenever something moves, you're immediately drawn to it. You got to see if it's friend or foe, and whether you need to run or you need to embrace it. That's what their senses are for. So they're always going to take you out.
Yeah.
There's always going to be there's a bird. Oh, there's a sound. Oh, there's something moving. So that's always going to happen. But coming back becomes easier and easier with practice. And if we practice bringing our awareness back as much as we practice bringing it out, we would be just as good at being in that. And that takes practice, because most of us haven't done hardly any of that ever.
Yeah.
Because we're living mostly in the outside world, and we distract ourselves from the call home.
Well,
bury ourselves in something else.
Yeah, you said a lot of profound things here, and just now you said this we are an eternal spark in a temporary body in an infinite universe. I think we all need to tap into that reality, to connect with that reality. And the quote I was mentioning earlier that I saw in a book called The Discoverers, the quote was, where the telescope ends, the microscope begins. In other words, there's only so far out we can see, and realizing how humble we ought to probably be because of it, and not so self-centered. And then the microscope, the introspection of ourselves begins at that place as well. But
of course, the microscope actually just gives you smaller details, but they're still on the outside.
Yeah.
What we need is an introscope.
An introscope. Yeah, good point. Well, the interesting thing about light, there's so many interesting properties of light, and I want to get back to this nutrition topic here in a second as well. But light is one of these things that the properties are, obviously the speed of light is the fastest known speed in the universe, and also the more pronounced and strong the light is, the more pronounced the shadows become. The shadows being maybe areas of so-called darkness in our world and in our lives.
Only when it hits bodies that don't radiate their own light.
Yeah.
If everybody radiated their own light, there would be no shadows. That's even true in human behavior.
Yeah.
If everybody lived lit up, there wouldn't be a shadow in human affairs. We wouldn't have wars.
All excellent points. Yeah. We all need to light ourselves up to bring more peace, harmony, joy to this world. And on that note, I don't want to shift gears too much, but in the interest of time and everything too, which is all a finite aspect of our existence, but it is part of what we're doing with the podcast. We have a somewhat of a time limit, and I wish we didn't. Yes. But tell me more about what you do in terms of, and we also have for our listeners, we're going to have link in the show notes and on our website for this total sexy health program and a free course, a mini course, and a free book that's available there. So you can link up to all that. But tell me about all of that and in conjunction with the other things you do in terms of nutrition and so on. Go ahead.
I just told you about Total Sexy Health, those 8 parts.
Okay. So people can study that more in depth through the link that we're going to provide.
Yeah. So that's an overview of it.
Okay.
But the thing that's really interesting, I started in health and in physical health and worked my way into the non-physical.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found as I was doing the work is I would give people really good information because I'm really good at giving people really good information when I know what I'm talking about, right? And they wouldn't put it in practice. And I started thinking about why is it that people have so much good information and they don't put it in practice? And the conclusion I came to was they don't put it in practice if they're not inspired. And so as important as getting good information is that you feel inspired. And the truth is, when you're inspired, you kind of get out of your mental ruts much easier. You can make changes that need to be made that will improve the quality of your life or the quality of life around you. And it becomes kind of second nature. Mm-hmm. But when you're not inspired, you tend not to lift a finger. And if you're really uninspired, depressed, you might even kill your body, destroy your body, because you're so not interested in living. And so how important is it for people to live lit up from within? Because that's what makes all the changes easier. Yeah. And it's because if I'm in love with my existence, then I will do whatever it takes to prolong it. And then that means, okay, well, instead of frying with oils, I'm going to get unfried oils. Instead of using saturated fats, I'm going to make sure I get my omega-3 and 6 essential fatty acids. I'm going to eat more plant-based. I'm going to eat more whole foods. I'm going to take steps in the direction of what nature's mandate for food was, which is fresh, whole, raw, organic, in season, local, and sun-ripe or sun-unripe. Right? That was nature's mandate. Yeah. So when you look at when you look at your cupboards and your fridge and you look at what's in there, you could ask yourself, how many steps away have I taken from fresh, whole, raw, organic? Because every step you've taken away from nature's mandate, it will cost you something in health eventually.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about the virus and the lockdown,
please.
We have a healthcare system that is misrepresented because it's actually a disease management system. It's not about healthcare. It's about crisis intervention, symptom suppression, life support systems, and the management of your journey into the graveyard. That's not healthcare. That's disease management. And it should be called disease management because the misrepresentation confuses people. Healthcare is the appropriate use of light, oxygen, water, and foods to build a body that is built in line with the natural system, out of which it came, within which its genetic program was put together, and all run by life using that program that life put together for living aligned with nature. You cannot be healthy living out of line with nature. And you cannot be healthy living out of line with your nature either.
Yeah.
So that's the foundation. And once you get that and you're inspired, then the information is pretty easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Take steps to live closer aligned with nature. Tear up your stupid lawn in your back and front yard and plant vegetables and flowers, right? Make some of your own food. Then you know whether it's organic or not because you know what you put on it.
Yeah,
right?
true story.
And then you don't have the transportation costs on the environment, and you could train your children to appreciate the rhythms of nature. The fact that you put a radish seed in and you can't pull the little 2 green leaves out and say, is the radish ready yet? Is the radish ready yet? No, you got to put it in there, and then you got to wait, and then pretty soon, maybe it takes months. You see, there is a pace to nature.
Yeah.
And it teaches you patience, and it teaches you to harmonize your life with the rhythms of nature.
Yeah.
So to actually tear up your lawn and have the kids make their own, favorite food, whether that's kale or radishes or carrots or whatever. And then you also have the freshest food, because the food in the supermarket is not fresh. It's 3 days old or 6 days old or 2 weeks old. Oranges from Florida in Vancouver in winter, they're like at least 2 weeks old. And sometimes the vitamin C that oranges are supposed to supply us with is completely gone by the time you eat the orange. But if you grow it in your backyard, fresh means it's in the ground. You pull the carrot, you wipe it on your pants, and you eat it. That's fresh. Right?
Yeah.
And you can't get fresh if you don't have it in your vicinity. And your yard, if you have a house, then you have it. You can grow it in your vicinity. And if you only have an apartment, then you can at least grow some green onions or some herbs and spices in your windowsill. So you can even garden and it's fun to do that.
Yeah.
And watching things grow is actually quite
fulfilling.
But there's something right about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we need to get back to that. Everything you're saying, I absolutely agree with. It's a matter, and when it comes to our decision making, it sounds like it's all about our decisions either empower us or imprison us, and the more we make one direction or the other is the more we get of that thing, empowerment or imprisonment.
Yeah.
And
and hopefully the decisions you make come out of being in touch with your power, because then you won't make imprisoning decisions.
Yeah. And
because I like to suck back behind the thought, because the thought is generated by my state of being. So if I'm discontent, I will create negative thoughts, because it goes from feeling to thoughts to words to actions to consequences. But it starts with state of being. And if you're not aware of your state of being, then your thoughts are random. And your thoughts are actually supposed to give direction to your physical movement.
Right.
Or even to your inner practice.
Yeah. I love everything you bring to the table, my friend. It's people can find you, these days everyone's got, for the most part, the internet. If you listen to podcasts, you must have some access to the internet. And also Udo's Choice, your brand is available at Whole Foods and probably other places as well, right?
Yeah, I worked with oils and enzymes, although my Udo's Choice is not on the enzymes and the probiotics anymore. Probiotics in the fridge, I don't recommend probiotics that are not refrigerated, because they really deserve to retain their benefits. They deserve to be refrigerated. And then digestive enzymes, because when you cook foods, you destroy the enzymes and the probiotics, so you should replace those. In nature, you got them off the food. There's enzymes in the food and the probiotics on the food. Now we've changed all of that, and now we. So when we cook the foods, we should replace the enzymes, because our body was not made to do the whole job of digestion. It was supposed to do the cleanup. And the self-digestion of the foods by the enzymes they contain is about 60%, or anywhere from 10 to 90, but on average 60%.
Yeah.
And the probiotics, kind of control unfriendly bacteria that also live in your digestive tract from getting out of hand.
Yeah.
So those are really important. So those three I've worked with. And fiber, because fiber feeds the probiotics, and fiber does a lot of really, really good things. Like if you ate coconut oil will increase your LDL cholesterol. But if you eat the coconuts, you don't get increased cholesterol. They think it's the fiber that protects you from that. So, and it always goes back to, eat foods the way nature made them, eat them fresh. And there's a saying, eat things that spoil, just eat them before they do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something to all this about connecting with nature as what it is and not reinventing the wheel as we've done largely with humanity, especially the last couple hundred years. We've created all this industrial nonsense to a large extent, and now no longer are in touch with what we truly are and were before all this. And we need to get back to that clearly, because we're destroying ourselves, and that's irrefutable. We're destroying ourselves as humanity. We gotta stop.
Yeah, better living through chemistry never got us better living.
Yeah. Yeah, good points on all fronts, my friend.
It just got us more out of touch.
Yeah.
In our thinking, in our actions, in all kinds of different ways, and just about everything we do.
Yeah, we need to get back to that.
And the increase in longevity came mostly from hygiene and better nutrition, not from the drugs and vaccines and all of those things we invented. The vaccine for measles was invented when measles were almost gone already. And that came from better nutrition, better lifestyle, building the body stronger so that it can deal with the creatures in the environment and build its own immunity to it. And to stick a needle through all of that protection that we have from outside attacks is already, if you think about it, it's like, why are you bypassing the body's protection systems by sticking the needle through it and then pushing poison and then pushing mercury and aluminum and formaldehyde and retroviruses that came from mice because it was grown in mouse tissues and these vaccines were never cleaned up or tested for all the garbage they contain, and then they have side effects and more side effects. Autism, of course, being one, and of course that's a hot topic. Nobody wants to, the industry does not want that to accept that. But autism was 1 in 10,000 100 years ago, and now it's 1 in 35. And it's like, okay, well, where did that come from? It came from something, but it did not come from eating too many fresh, whole, raw, organic foods. How can you tell you that?
Yeah, cancers also. I heard that male sperm counts are half what they were for our grandparent or grandfathers. All these various things that just speak for themselves that obviously we're not on the right track.
That was from pesticides, a lot from pesticides, but other industrial chemicals as well.
Wow. Well, blowing my mind, my friend. We could talk a long time, and people can find you online. Udo's Choice, of course, brand, and also the Total Sexy Health free ebook and mini course.
The Udo is the website. TheUdo.com is one of the
Udo
websites.
Is UDO.
THEUDO. And the other one is udoschoice.com. That's where the products are.
Simple enough. That's what this stuff gets down to. The real answers are simple, and yet we've overcomplicated ourselves. Let's get back to simplicity, our friends, our fellow humans.
Yeah, we don't need more sophisticated. We need more heartfelt.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And if blowing your mind gets you closer to being in touch with your heart, then I've done my job.
Yeah, I think so. Well, thank you for your time, and again, I'd love to keep chatting with you. We'll do another one of these down the road, my friend, if you're available, and hopefully another.
I love doing this.
Yeah.
Thank you for being an amplifier for a message.
Yeah, and here's to.
Message that,
I appreciate it. I love doing this.
Yeah, and it's not far from your heart's message. So thank you for doing the work you do to make good things better known.
Thank you, and cheers to another 78 plus years for you as well. And For our audience, this is how we end our podcast, my friend. We just simply tell you, empower yourself, empower the world around you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to Empower Humans. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review this podcast. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit empowerhumans.com. We'll catch you next time.